Nigeria's oil industry has been marred by corruption and predatory behavior, resulting in catastrophic pollution in the Niger Delta. The region is now considered one of the most toxic places on earth, bearing the scars of decades of environmental degradation and pollution. The reckless development of oil fields, driven by financial shortcuts and inadequate maintenance of pipeline equipment, has left a lasting impact. Many pipelines, despite being decades past their useful lifespan, remain in service, contributing to the environmental crisis.
You can't but notice and feel sad at the destruction of the environment by all manners of interest groups because of corruption. In the oil producing areas, the environment is totally degraded because of the alliance between the government and the oil companies.
The Human and Environmental Development Agenda, HEDA, in partnership with HOCMOTH and support of the MacArthur Foundation and other partners, has been at the forefront of challenging the status quo. HEDA has played a crucial role in seeking accountability from the oil and gas sector and tackling corrupt individuals who have profited at the expense of the country and its people.
I think the biggest and the most important critique of not just Nigeria's energy transition plan, but all energy transition plans is what we've heard from the last panel, and that is that the energy transition plans is looking at the future, which is good, but is not also looking behind to say, how do we ensure that cleanup happens? There is need for cleanup in communities that have hosted oil extraction, for instance. There is need for some remediation in communities that have hosted mega dams because it also has serious environmental implications. And this is important. This is something we're not looking at.
At the first International Anti-Corruption and Climate Change Conference, organized by HEDA and its partners, stakeholders in Nigeria's civil society space converge to dissect critical issues of corruption and climate change. The conference, themed National Stakeholders Engagement for Accountability and Transparency in Addressing Climate Change, Energy Transition and Oil Extraction Licensing for Sustainable Development, revealed shocking truth about the oil industry. According to Sulaiman Aribabu, HEDA's executive secretary, contrary to claims of paucity of funds, resources exist outside conventional funding windows but are constantly ignored by authorities.
The biggest argument by African governments, which is practical, is that if there's going to be any transition, we need a huge investment. We need a whole lot of money. And the response by most African countries, and of course by Nigeria, is that we have done more investment in oil extraction, in hydrocarbon extraction. And it's not good for the planet. We know that. But these are existential issues for us. So the counter argument we are putting on the table is that resources actually exist outside of the hydrocarbon investment, to help bring development fast, to help Africa transit in terms of our energy requirement for now and the future. Some of these resources are already here and are now being mobilized.
Meanwhile, Chief Femi Falana, senior advocate of Nigeria, lambasted the alliance between government and international oil companies, making it difficult to enforce environmental laws in Nigeria.
It has been difficult to enforce environmental laws in the country. I'm sure you are also aware that right now, a lot of mining activities are going on in the country. It also surprised you that because of the failure of the government to contain the activities of illegal miners, the environment is being degraded. Trees are felled without any replacement. Gold is taken out of the country. It's estimated that about $9 billion worth of gold is smuggled out of Nigeria yearly, not by the ordinary people, but by highly placed criminal elements who even sometimes use private jets and helicopters. Right now, these illegal mining activities are also fueling terrorism, because the terrorists also make a lot of money from mining to buy weapons. Because of corrupt practices, it has been difficult for the government to combat terrorism, to combat smuggling, to combat the degradation of the environment, the pollution of the environment. And so, if you have officials of government who have engaged in reckless corruption, there's no way you can really address the challenges of climate change. So this is the link.
Anthony Riccardo, Program Director at Ricomon, an Italy-based company, emphasized the need for community involvement in achieving developmental goals in Nigeria's energy transition efforts.
In the international community, there is a broader discussion about energy transition, how to go out of fossil fuels. I think there's a fundamental problem that sometimes we neglect the political economy of fossil fuels. And the history of Nigeria has been a history, unfortunately, of depredation on the ground, of looting, and the responsibility are not only with the local elites, but also with the multinational companies.
Nigeria's oil industry is a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of corruption and environmental neglect. It is time for collective action to hold companies and individuals accountable for their actions and to prioritize sustainable development.
What we learn from that, I think we learn two things. I mean, first of all, that without a grassroots and communities involvement, no development model can work. And the second lessons we learn is that, however, rural law is fundamental, but the enforcement of the law has always been the problem. And we still see that internationally the enforcement of the law, when we talk about corruption, is a problem. Several of the big corruption cases affecting the oil and gas industry involve different jurisdictions, not only in Nigeria, involve courts also in northern countries. But ultimately, in very few cases, there have been also conviction and those responsible have been prosecuted. And above all, there have been very little cooperation with Nigeria for recovered assets. So what I'm saying is that we can't have climate justice if we don't address the legacy of the past.
The conference was a step in the right direction, and this report highlights the urgent need for accountability and transparency in the oil industry, as well as the importance of community engagement in addressing environmental and developmental challenges. Olubenga George, Icona Television.